I feel like the words I share this morning are simply an addendum to what Sheila has already said. The events of this week have left us as horrified as ever before in many of our lifetimes. As we observe cruelty sinking to new depths, we find our heart rate quickening, our courage faltering, our imagination dampened. Every day this week has had its block of news alerts, from rolling back of environmental actions in California to a New York City mayoral front-runner slammed with swift calls for his deportation, to the largest transfer of wealth to the already uber wealthy, creating a withdrawal of health care for millions and further burdening already impoverished populations, to withdrawing aid for Ukraine in its deadly struggle against Russian aggression. We could speak at length about the heinous deportation camps and the executive orders and legislative decisions, assuming realities that dominate news cycles. But let this suffice. We will not focus there. But it is an important reminder for us that this is the stark and sobering backdrop against which we are called to make and cultivate beautiful community. What we have experienced in these moments together this morning stands in defiant contrast to what we observed this past week. Nothing earth-shattering, yet not cruel. Nothing that will capture the bright lights, but a solemn, quiet, joyful commitment to something completely contrary to the horrors of most headlines. We, as followers of Jesus the Christ, have a countercultural calling, and as such, it is revolutionary. Our text describes the simple lives of those with this calling, devoted to communal living, which simply means they shared everything, to a deepening spirituality, to common meals, to prayer. That's it. No manifesto, no marketing campaigns to sway public opinion, no podcasts to garner the following of the masses. Simple, ordinary, honest, sustained. That's it. That was enough to support their very lives, and it resulted in a movement that has lasted for thousands of years. Who told them that these were the essential ingredients? How was it that they did not organize around the same structure and complexity many of them had experienced in their previous environment, in the Jewish temple or synagogue? I don't believe anyone told them anything about what was to come next. The only instructions Jesus left were to wait for Spirit and to share what they experienced with others. No templates, no courses, no outlines. Because of the experience they had with Jesus walking on the dusty hills of Palestine, they came away with an understanding that faithful living included spending time with one another, cultivating a generosity toward one another that surpassed personal comfort or ownership, valuing the simple things of life: food, prayer, learning from, and joy. What did it all result in? Well, I already gave you a hint. Joy was one. Our text also says an inadvertent attraction for others, meaning they didn't form committees or initiatives to determine how to be attractive to those outside of their group. It simply happened in a response to how they lived. In other words, who they were seamlessly became how they acted. Nouns became verbs for those who think in grammatical terms. The final verses in the Gospel of St. Matthew, which you mentioned, Sheila, much of the historic Christian church has embraced as its reason for being has been translated as discipleship or making disciples. A number of weeks ago, Arnold and I spoke about, well, he spoke with me, about how this word, discipleship, has been used not to benefit the faith, but to its detriment. What we observe in this text has nothing to do with the structures and forms that have proliferated around this classical concept of discipleship, which in turn have resulted in activities that convey belief and dogma, institution, and rules. So I hope that sums up a little bit of what we talked about, Arvel, but I do hope that you will have an opportunity to share a whole lot more about that in the future. When our text speaks of Jesus' followers devoting themselves to the apostles' instructions, I envision that happening in their culture spontaneously, over shared meals, in the backyard around tables with wine and bread as dusk sets in. Some will go to the riverside to wash clothes, and others will take the children and teach them carpentry. It happens in all of these spaces. It happened on the road of life just as Jesus' instruction and teaching happened as people walked and ate, worked and celebrated. These Jesus followers devoted themselves to being companions to one another, or companioning. In our context, that includes talking through interpersonal struggles as they arise. It includes being present for those who are going through grief and loss. It includes cooking meals from those who are going through hard times or those who are ill. It includes offering help with menial chores. Rod and I have been recipients of this kind of companioning so often along our journey. We are all just walking each other home. Those words are most often attributed to Rumi. But this describes companioning. This is what it looks like when nouns become verbs, when what we say becomes our actions. In our era of unprecedented cruelty and destruction, we often feel helpless, feeling in search of how to impact current reality, which representative to call, which protest to participate in, which letter campaign to join. We also have no template by which to live. As Jesus followers, we can be heartened that the earliest followers also didn't know what to do, nor what would come next. Just like them, we also came. Because Jesus' only instruction to his followers, which includes us, were to wait for Spirit and to share what we have experienced with others. What happened next was simply a continuation of what had happened on the road of life in the previous 3 years for the Jesus followers. Jesus had been their constant companion, and in turn they also learned how to be companions to each other. They learned companioning by being companioned. In an increasingly splintered and harsh world, close connection gains in importance. But not just any kind of connection. We don't need more exploitative, controlling, and demanding connection. We need companioning that empathy, compassion, and patient presence. Somehow, these qualities have recently come under fire, both from political operatives and religious spokespeople. In a reflection on how to live in the shadow of the 4th of July freedom celebration, Reverend following. Freedom at its best is not escaping responsibility, but a deep it. It grows in isolation, but in relationship. in the working of building and making a society. This is the very definition of companioning. There are barriers to companioning in our generation. Fox calls the unholy and demonic trinity made of competition, compulsion, and dualism, all in strong opposition to compassion. This unholy trinity against companioning, calling, and the barriers we will encounter in living it out. It signals that we are on the journey. Being aware of this calling does not require a detailed outline, but it does require waiting on Spirit, joining in prayer, and living life together. These simple yet profound ingredients serve as our guideposts as we move forward in this treacherous age. This is where we can turn when daily, even hourly, deaden and terrify us. We turn to the simple, ordinary, and honest tasks of everyday life. Earliest Jesus followers could never have predicted what this simple companioning would accomplish after Jesus left the earth. So too, we may be skeptical about these having profound impact in our chaotic world, but they do. Together, let us resolve to embrace the countercultural, to walking each other home. May God help us.